So, right when you thought we were done, the inspiration kept flowing in me. And this is the flow and how it works in my life these days, is that there's not a whole lot of logic around it. It's not a logical decision. If it was logical, it'd be like, nope, I promised this many calls. This is what we did. Everyone's feeling good. Everyone's felt some level of a shift, some bigger than others, which is quite typical. And for those of you who are feeling smaller shifts, know that bigger shifts are coming. We've planted seeds. That's how seeds work, right? It's like they germinate at the perfect time. So know that you have the calls, that I know that you can review them. And I know people have already watched some of them twice. And so that's all amazing. And because it wasn't logic, I felt like, oh, no, we still have something left. We still have something left. And I've probably run now, I think 15 groups, over 200 calls. I have never done this before, but this one was like bubbling out of me that I literally, I was like, well, there's more. We are not done. Spirit is not done with you. And so thank you for being here, and thank you for, following the flow of your own to be here and to allow yourself to receive more. And I'm very excited at the conversation that we're going to have today. So hi, Sneha. Hi, Vicky. Hi. You're so welcome. So the topics kept coming up, and for me, it felt like there's this theme that kept coming up, and it was about connection. It was about connection. And so this applies when we desire more connection with the people in our lives, right? And so you can apply this to whatever relationship that you want. One thing, and there's 4 aspects to it. There's 4 aspects to it that I want to break down for you. And again, this is for where we want to deepen connection, okay? Where it applies to, everyone, whether it's your children or your spouse or your ex or your, we have all kinds of situations in this group, your business partner, your employer, your whatever it is, a dear friend. It really does apply to everyone. Once we decide that it matters, right? Once we decide like, no, this relationship matters to me and I want to give it a go. And we know, of course, that all relationships don't last forever. But if we decide that, no, like this is one that matters to me. This is one that no matter how the chips fall, I want to give it my best. We have a great history. We have things that ride on it. It could be children. It could be all kinds of things. And you see the value in the person, right? So once we've decided that this relationship matters, then what's coming through now is, well, how do we deepen that connection? And I know we spent a whole module, a whole call on talking about need versus desire. And I just want to remind all of us that when we say need versus desire, it doesn't mean that we don't need to connect, of course. The point of releasing the need is to liberate yourself and liberate the people in our lives, knowing that those needs, those desires can be fulfilled in so many ways, right? When I shared with you very openly, like one of my best, dearest human in my life passed away, it wasn't like, oh, I don't need her anymore, or I had to figure out how I didn't need her anymore, or that even just my connection to source, which is powerful as heck, would fulfill that. It's, yes, that's the spirit level, but on the human level, there's still that need for connection. There's still that need for wanting to feel supported. It's that we're open to having it fulfilled in any way, that we remember that the people in our lives are beautiful avenues through which it can come through, but that one person doesn't have to be the end all and be all. And generally, one person is never going to provide everything. And that's why we have so many relationships. And that's why it's important to foster and really give time to connection. And so this is literally what was coming through for me to share. And sometimes it's the obvious stuff that in longer term relationships become not so obvious, right? So, like if there was anything that your parents ever said to you, did you ever have a relationship with your parents where, they said something over and over and over and over, and you're like, okay, Dad, we know, right? It's like, you want to get to a place, like that's a gift when we get to a place in a relationship where it is so obvious to somebody that you no longer need to say something. Even if it's tie your shoelace, don't forget to drink water, blah, 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 like whatever was embedded in us as children, right? It's like now our parents' voices are like there permanently in our ear if that seed was planted repeatedly. It's not because our parents said it once, it's because somebody said something to you repeatedly that it's like so a given, you know? And I have two boys, as you know. My younger one's they're both very cuddly. The younger one's exceptionally cuddly and exceptionally verbal around affection and appreciation and receiving from me. And like, he just opens my heart on an hourly basis. And I remember one time I said to him, you know, have I ever told you, like, you're like the biggest dream come true? And he was just like, yeah, I know. And I was like, you know that? He's like, yeah, you tell me all the time. And I was like, oh, that's so good. That's so good that you know that. Like, I want to get to that point with my kids, don't we? All of us, like, we want to get to that point in our key relationships where it is so obvious to the person that you adore them. And in some relationships, especially parent-child, that's often the case because we spend a long time. The love is the deepest, most unconditional level of love that often we experience, whether it's never going to be perfect, but it's this level of bond that's really, whether we had the best parents or the worst parents, it's long, it's deep, it's intense, right? But what I find when working with couples and working with friends and family and clients is that the things that we think are obvious are actually not. And it's mind-blowing. And in fact, even in this group of 9 beautiful, gorgeous human beings, we've had multiple people give me feedback that they, even though they weren't, you know, there was still some hurt, there was still some like resistance to being the first one to kind of take a step and put out an olive branch and take some time and recognize or make time for someone. We had multiple people's spouses say to those ones, and it's 111, which is an angel number. I thought you didn't love me anymore. Isn't that mind-blowing? Is that mind-blowing? These are actually specifically relationships where like there's no talk about divorce, there's no talk about any marriage, not even on the table. Like it, you know, they're busy people with busy lives and there's always stuff going on. But they're not ones where I would have thought that that was the response that they would have gotten. And it was really eye-opening for me. It deepened even further what I want to say. In the first piece of this, the first of the 4 is recognition and appreciation. And really taking the time to recognize the people in our lives and really explicitly, so obviously say what we want to say and what we know they want to hear, right? Part of this tapping into the heart of another and living from an open heart is starting to understand the other party's love language. And actually, I am going to place the link to the actual love language test. You know, there is one expert, many of you probably even done it or heard of it, but it's not just about, you know, there's the 5 elements of love languages. Like some people appreciate time, some people show love through service, some people show love through touch, some people through gifts. And there's one more category, I think, words of affirmation. And I would love for you to do that on yourself. And I would love for you to do that test on whoever it is that you're thinking of, if you're open to that. And if it's some important, meaningful relationship, because they're very illuminating. You go through a series of questions and it tells you what your highest love language is and what your other person, your spouse, partner, whoever's love language is. And I also invite us all to use our own discernment around that. So I'll give you an example. Like in my life, sometimes, God bless my husband, he's like the example and that I always share, and he knows that. And well, you're welcome in the chat if you think you have a sense of what your love language is, or somebody that you know and love what their love language is. I would love to hear about it. Let's give some thought to this, right? So with my husband, one of the things that comes up when he's upset with me, one of our disagreements is like, I do everything. I do everything. And generally that would piss me off because I don't actually believe that he does everything. Like, what the heck? Like, I do everything, right? Like, everyone thinks they are the ones that are doing everything. And then we have a nanny in our home who does so much. And it's like, well, you're not doing everything because she's doing so much and I'm doing so much. So if she's doing so much and I'm doing so much, and then we want to start measuring, right? Well, then how could you be doing everything? And like, you just always say that, like, right? That's an option and I've exercised that option many times where I'm like, you do not do everything. Yeah, do you do this? Do you do that? Do you buy the gifts? Do you do? It's like we take stock of what we're doing in relationships, and it's very normal. And I do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I think we're here because we want to be better than normal, right? I know I'm here because I want to do more. I want to do better. I know that you want the same. It's like, how do we level up? How do we elevate the relationship? And so if I were to look at what his biggest complaint is and turn it around on its head, fascinatingly enough, when I did do the love language test on my beautiful, amazing partner, bless him, his biggest one was acts of service. And when I think about our beautiful, long 25, 26 years almost, well, it's 26 years, yeah, dating, that is how he loves me. And that is what he wants. He loves me with acts of service. And for him to feel loved, it's quality time. And I find those to be so intertwined just intuitively, because it's like time and energy. He loves through time and energy. He wants to be loved through time and energy. And so many of us want that. And so what I could hear, and this is the mediator in me, and this is the consciousness in all of us, we can hear things on a surface level, but if we really want to deepen connection, start to tap into what is it that the person is really saying, and tune into what does the person really need. Can we connect to what the desire is, what the need is? Oprah often says, after thousands of interviews and many years of doing interviews, she felt that it came down to this basic core need, which is, can you see me? Do I matter? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you see me? And do I matter? What I say, does that matter to you? What I do, does that matter to you? Do I matter to you? Right? And again, when our needs are not fulfilled, when we're looking at what can you do for me? It's like, well, do you see me? Do I matter to you? I feel like I don't even matter to you. Like I walk by the hall and you don't even look at me anymore, right? Like that's the energy that so much of us reside in. But flipping this on its head, where we've figured out how to tap into our own network of being fulfilled through connection through source, connection to life, connection to self, connection to others, that we're ready to be the one in a relationship where we take the first step. Not to say you have to take all the steps, but that if this is a tango, that you're ready to lead in a new energy, then the question is, do I see her? Do I see him? Do I take the time to see them from my heart, not from my ego? To hear from my heart, not from my ego. My ego sees and hears him in those moments, which is not often, thank God, but that is the crux of our disagreements usually, is I do everything. Yeah, like, yeah, Rad, let me do that too, because I already do everything, right? That's what he'll say to me. And he definitely does so much. Obviously, you can't do everything, like I said, but that's not the point. And if I were just listening with my ego, then I would get stuck there. And that's where I see a lot of people get stuck. But what if I literally tuned into what is he trying to say? What he's trying to say, and put it in the chat if you're tuned into this, and if you have any thoughts. Like, I'd love you to hear your discernment. What do you think he's actually trying to say to me? What do you think? What part of him is looking to be recognized and appreciated? Maybe I'm kind of spoon feeding the answer here to you, right? It's, do you see all that I do? The way I love you is by doing for you. Do you see that? Do you see me? Do you hear me? And does what I do matter to you? Does what you see me do matter to you? And the reason I love doing this work has always been, and always is, and always will be, because I get so much from it. Like, every time I do a round of a program, I come out a different human being. And I play with it. I've already played with it, and I play with it more. And so in the last few weeks, even I've been playing with stating the obvious. You might think it's obvious, and what we've seen in this group already in the short time is small acts led to statements like, oh, wow, I didn't even think you loved me anymore. And it's like, what? Right? State the obvious, even if you think it's obvious. State the obvious, even if you think, especially if you think it's obvious, because it's not. It's really not. And the way you'll know if it was obvious is if you get that response that I get from Sahil, that my parents get from me. It's like, okay, I know. Like, let that be our litmus test. And if you get a, wow, thank you, so I did say to him last week, he ran a beautiful Mother's Day. Was it exactly what I wanted? In the end, probably next year I'd like a quieter Mother's Day, but it didn't matter because I felt so grateful for what he attempted to accomplish. And you could see him just trying so hard. Like, we ended up hosting at my house. And I reminded myself, I'm so blessed. I have such a beautiful life where I get to worry about who to celebrate. Like, the Mother's Days end up often being about going to see my mom and my mother-in-law. And it's like, what a great problem to have. I was so mindful that I don't have a guarantee that they're always going to be here. So for me, in my head, the biggest, I think, harm to Mother's Day is like expectation. So I just threw the expectation out. And anytime I got like irritated with like, oh my God, I'm so tired already. And I haven't even started the party. And like, how the hell did I end up hosting 20 people at my house on Mother's Day? Like, what the fuck was I thinking? It was like, you decided this, your idea that your husband ran with, and because you want to do it for your mom and your mother-in-law. And I was like, right. And as soon as I tuned into the intention behind why I was doing this, I was so good. And for him, he wanted me to do nothing. He wanted me to like chill and sit and enjoy, and it's Mother's Day. And he's like, Brad, don't, like, go shower, go get ready. And I loved him for it. And the reality was we were kind of against the clock. And when you're hosting an event, it's like, well, we got to do this, we got to do this. And so I was like, babe, let me just help you because it's a lot. And it just, two are better than one. And so I was in the kitchen, I was emptying the dishwasher, and he was busting his ass and I was busting my ass. And like, again, would I sign up for next year? Probably. I'm such a glutton for social hangouts. I'll probably find the energy again. But what mattered to me the most was how hard he was trying. That was his act of service. That was his time and energy. That's his love language. That's how he loves me. And so my choices are to bitch and moan and be like, well, yeah, that was a little bit tiring Mother's Day, or to appreciate and acknowledge the love that he was giving me, the love that he is sending me, and receive it. And so we sat down, and every night with my family, I do a gratitude practice. We've done it for years and years. And sometimes we'll miss it, but it's kind of rare. And so And if we do miss it, we'll catch up. We'll do like, oh, we did do gratitude last night, so let's do it for the whole weekend. And so we sat there and we're really tired, it was really late. And we're like, okay, quick gratitude, school day tomorrow. And it was my turn. And I said, I am just so grateful to Papa for throwing me the best Mother's Day in the whole world, and just all the love he always gives me and all the care. And you could just feel, couldn't see him in the dark. We were all lying down in my kid's bed. You could just feel him being. And then I can't remember if it was a few hours later or the next day, I looked him in the eyes and I was like, that was the best Mother's Day ever. And I just want to thank you for all the things that you do for me. And I could say, it's 25 years. He knows how much I love him. He already knows. But his reaction told me that I don't say it enough, because he was just so happy. He wasn't like, oh, I know. He didn't give me the Sahil response. That's the test. Like, do I say it till I'm blue in the face so that you hear me? Can I see you more? I feel like if they don't give us that response, there's room for more. There's room for more. Do we recognize? Do we acknowledge? Do we appreciate explicitly and allow the person to be seen? Do we see not, I had a friend who asked her husband for a butterfly themed 50th birthday gift. And it was the funniest story ever. He ended up finding this, like, there's a scientific name for this, I'm told. A wooden board with like 40 dead butterflies pegged on them with the scientific name underneath. Like, they're literally real dead butterflies. And we laughed and laughed. It was one of my lawyer friends. And it's like, do I see that dead butterflies, or do I see the intention under the gift? And you know what's funny? We do that with strangers. We do that with perfect strangers. If somebody who didn't know me as well, or know my friend in this example as well, if I had given her, even if I had given her the dead butterfly thing, she would have probably received it more if I, because it's like, oh, Rad, wow, how did you remember that I love butterflies? And like, she really meant well, right? And we would receive it. But when it comes to our spouse or people that are key in our life, somehow we've lost that connection to assuming the best instead of the worst, expecting less and being more grateful with the people that we love the most, that matter to us the most. So it's reconnecting with that and starting to connect to the underlying intention, the underlying energy, and seeing like, maybe this is not exactly what I would have wanted, but what was the energy? And am I opening myself up, or am I blocked? Am I blocked, or am I allowing, assuming good intentions? We don't do that with our key people. I see it all the time. And people will use their mind to oust. The other day, one of the members of this group was telling me what they got for a birthday from their spouse. And it was like, well, could it have been that like he really thought that you really loved that, and that's something you used to really enjoy during COVID? And she was like, oh, no. You don't know. Like, it's for him. He bought it for himself. And it's like, I know that if I bought you the same gift with the same exact reasoning, you would have received it differently. And she thought about it and she was like, yeah, I would have received it from you thinking like, wow, this is something you found out that I love doing, and that you went and bought me this extravagant gift. Where do we disconnect from that? And often it's the hurt and the past and remembering. And we start to get all our wires tangled, right? The reason we don't come in with good intention, assuming good intentions, is because we've got our wires. It's like, well, no, but it's this. No, but it's that. And it's like, well, that shit needs to get cleared up. And that's the work that we all need to do. And we do on a daily basis if we're really committed to this. However you do it, whether it's your meditation practice, clearing the past, clearing the cache of the memory, and starting from the present moment and reconnecting to that, right? So recognition and appreciation, and to take that to one whole other level. And I won't go into the long story of how this epiphany struck me once. I was working with a couple at one point. But what I realized was you may start to tune into the underlying, intention and start to realize like maybe this person's bitching and moaning about something. They actually just want to be recognized for that, right? And you might come to your own really wise conclusions. And that's amazing. And to take that to a whole other level, what if you sat down with that person and you asked them, I just want to take a moment to like really acknowledge you. I don't think I've done that in a long time. People want to renew their vows and they want to renew, make more fucking promises they're going to break. What if you spent time renewing your vision of that person and taking the time to recognize it, right? Them. And so if you sat down and you said, hey, I just want to recognize A, B, C, D, E. You had this moment, you used your discernment, you see what is the complaint. Maybe under the complaint, there's something that needs to be seen, addressed, just like a child, right? When children are whiny and irritable, it's not because they're whiny and irritable by nature, it's because they need something. They're trying to tell you they need something. It's the same with adults. We just sometimes don't have the time and energy for it, but that's literally the same, right? So you do that. You go through the exercise and you say, I see this and I see this. And I want you to know, like, I see the time and energy you put. I see how much you do. And I thank you. Like, wow, I don't know that I thank you enough. That's all huge. And then the last piece there, what if we said to them, is there anything else? Is there anything I'm missing? And I'm open to it. And you got to go in with an open heart here, folks. This is where we got to leave bitterman version of ourselves at the door. This is the next level of connection. Is there anything that you feel I might have missed? Not because I'm an asshole, not because I don't care. I'm asking you because sometimes our perspectives are skewed and I can only see what I can see from my eyes. And I want to see it from your eyes. And maybe it's something that's so obvious that I've overlooked it, but I'm open. Word it however you want to word it. What if we had that moment? And where it came up with this couple was I had worked with both of them and they had shared with me what they thought they were doing well. And then we had a meeting where they shared to each other recognition and appreciation. And I'm sitting there going, holy shit, he missed her biggest one. And you could see how it landed. And she missed his biggest one. And I'm the only one in the room that knows that. Like everyone knows what got missed for them, but the other person thought they nailed it. And I was like, you did not nail it. And it's just fascinating. Because that's just human nature. We have to communicate the obvious if we want deeper connection. And you can see how it lands. If you're at all intuitive, if you're all tapped into humans, I could see it. Like when she said to him, I want to thank you for this, this. It was like, oh, yeah, thank you. I received that. There was nothing deep or like you hit it in the chest in that moment. And that's okay, because we're not here to read minds. This is not a test of how tapped in are you to the other person. I mean, would it be great if we can nail it 100% of the time? Yes. My point to you is there is always this gap. And so the next question then is, me as a facilitator is, and thank you for that, and that was amazing. And now, is there anything else you would like to be recognized for? You better believe there was more. And then I would say to her, is there anything else you would like to be recognized for? And you better believe there was more. And if we come at that with an open heart, if we can just hear it instead of seeing it as like complaints, it's like, oh, well, oh, no, just listen. Can we just listen and not make it mean something about ourselves? What if we could make this a point of connection? What if this is that next level? You can spin this however you want. if I were you, like how I'm gonna do it is it's like, is there anything I missed? And if they have something, take it like a pearl. Vicky, this is so wonderful, taking it all in and loving it, really connecting, looking forward to hearing the rest. Amazing. Thank you for that, right? It's like, can we be open to more? Can we be open to seeing the person more? And you're allowed to say, thank you for that. And can I share with you, like, could we reverse this? Like, it's having those not common, kind of might feel a little uncomfortable, a little difficult, sometimes we're difficult, but it's like awkward sometimes, but it's because we haven't normalized it enough. And I'll tell you, the payoff is so huge. This is how we go deeper into connection. We have the conversation. Have the conversation. And to that point, I want to add the next piece. Take the time to do it. If that person is so important to you, do you take the time? I had a coaching call recently with a client of mine. We were talking about connection with her team at work. And she has a right-hand staff member who they do not have a good connection, and she wants to have a good connection. She wants to be a good leader and all the things I want, all the things everybody wants in that position. So they're all valid. Like, what a great desire. And I asked her, when's the last time you took her for lunch? Your staff person, your team, your right-hand person. And her eyebrows went up and she was like, never. Never. This is not a poo-poo. This is so normal. This is standard. Unless you were groomed by somebody and mentored by somebody, like I was groomed in big law firms where this was highlighted to us. And even there, I got so busy with my first law clerk of 7 years that after some time, it kind of was like, okay, only on birthdays and only, right? But the connection that's the most important is on the days when it's not a birthday, when it's not an anniversary, because those are the Hallmark dates. Those are the dates when Hallmark has told us, the world has told us, go connect. And that's why for so many people, Valentine's is just such a bust. It feels like so shitty, right? It feels so forced. For me, my husband, we're generally like, we don't need Valentine's. We celebrate when we want. We don't do birthday gifts as much because we give gifts whenever we want. Like, there's a flow to giving and receiving, and we don't want people to tell us when and how. But if we can make time for the people that are most important to us, if we can figure out what feels valuable to that person, is it just that I sit beside him on the sofa and watch a show? Like, that could be a really big bonding thing that a lot of people do. Is it just words of affirmation? Like, what is that person's love language? How does it feel? And for most people, the most valuable gift we give them is time. I had somebody in my top 5 circle, like, I hate ranking, but really like somebody super, super close to me, really beautifully, openly say to me in a very, like, what could have been a difficult conversation that turned into some deeper, wilder connection. She shared with me that the time that she always gets with me is always in this big group settings and these big, multi-person settings. And the reason she feels like she doesn't actually get to hang out with me anymore, just one-on-one, old rad, old jokes, the way we are when we're just the two of us. And it was such a light bulb moment for me. I was like, holy fuck, if I had never asked this question, if we had never gone and had that, what could have been an uncomfortable conversation, if I didn't totally anchor before I picked up the phone, I actually called her and hung up and then called her back when I was more anchored in the how much this person means to me. Like, are we serious? Like, this is like ride or die level human being in my life. It allowed me to reconnect to my heart. It allowed me to openly listen. It allowed me to stop listening with my ego and actually listen to what she was saying. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, I have to make time for this. Saying I'm busy is just for me not sufficient. I will not be happy if something happened to me or her, and that's where we left things. Like this person's way too important to me. And so within 2 weeks, I called her and I was like, hey, I'm going to be XYZ location doing work. Do you want to come join me? And then we can have dinner, and it's just me and you. And then there's a third person. I'm trying not to identify people who tried to insert themselves lovingly into the plan after for dinner. And I was like, if it's okay with you, like, I really just want to be with you right now. And she was so happy because I saw her and I heard her, and what she says and feels matters to me. It actually matters to me. And so it's not just about talk. It's like, now take action, prove it, right? Do you have it in you? Does this matter enough for you to can do it for you, for this connection that matters to you, to take the time? And a few of you in this last month and a half did this. And I commended you, and you did it kind of like getting it, but not fully feeling ready. Like you did it against your own ego, your own wound. And the payoff was so big. And it was those acts that you took that led to the moment of, I didn't actually think you loved me anymore. This is what's under our relationships. And it can look at, like, you have members in this group who've proven to us, and one of you shared it in the deep dive, that the trajectory of a relationship can be changed so quickly. But if we sit here and make it all about the other person, blame the other person and say, I'm the victim, you'll never get there. Because if it takes two to tango to get somewhere, even if it's the shittiest mess, then it requires both people to just see how they unconsciously participated to this point. It's not about blaming. It's just about being willing to take action in the right direction from where you are, and understanding that wherever we are, it's because it took us both to get here, right? And then a relationship is two people. And because you're here, and because you're the conscious, open-hearted, coming back to your heart, living from your heart, beautiful human being, you get to take the first step. You get to be the person who says, you know what? I keep complaining that this person never makes time for me and we're like losing our connection. I'm booking a date in that person's calendar. I'm going to take my team member out for lunch and let her know that this is literally no strings attached. I just want to connect with you deeper. If you want people to have our backs at work or at home, we have to have theirs. We have to create the connection. Connection doesn't just happen because we cut a paycheck or because we said vows at an altar one day and then threw a big fat party. Connection happens because we create it. We forge the connection. So do we recognize and enforce and appreciate? Do we take the time and know what it is that person's love language, you know, and speak to them in that and hear them in that? Those are two of the bigger aspects. And when it comes to the love languages, also knowing, like, do I allow myself to give and receive? Am I fully giving and receiving in that open energy from the heart? Am I assuming the best? Am I focusing on the best, right? And that's the third leg, is, am I receiving and giving with that highest assumption? I could have complained about Mother's Day, and the old Rad would have, you know, receiving in the highest energy is a gift that we give to ourselves, and it's a gift that we give to other people. So there is one story I want to share, and it takes me to the fourth point. Actually, no, there's one more before that. This is why I take notes. All of this is in the vein that we've discussed already of unconditional love, right? Unconditional love. And one of the parts of do you see me that I see a lot of us getting caught up and stuck in, which is causing a lot of disconnect in relationships and where we can upgrade, is loving the person where they are while simultaneously holding them, their highest self, their highest vision at the same time. And can you start to train your mind to do that? And this is a technique, actually, that I've shared many times with clients. I've shared even with my spouse. He had a dear friend of his who was going through some major stuff. So you can use this on a day-to-day basis. And you can also use this as a really powerful technique if there's somebody in your life that you want to help move them forward somewhere. And it's really important to have both happening at the same time, completely separately, as opposed to fused together. So I'm going to break this down for you. Somebody in this group was even sharing with me that they have a child who they want to see succeed in a certain way, right? Of course, when we're parents, we want to see our kids succeed. We want to see them do well. When we have partners, when we're married, we want to see them do well. And we can feel the potential in people. And sometimes it frustrates us because we're like, but like he just needs to do this and then he'll get there, right? Or like, here I am doing all the work and this person's not doing any work on themselves. And so we get frustrated because we're mixing two things. And so this is exactly what I shared with my husband, who was helping him with his friend, who my husband's like one of the nicest human beings in the world. And he's such a good listener. Like people call him because he should have been a therapist. Like he's just such a good listener. And he's non-judgmental and he's positive. And this friend had been going through this thing for a long time, as life happens sometimes, right? We get stuck and people we love get stuck. And so he usually doesn't come to me for advice. I wish he would come more. But he came to me and he was like, I really don't know how to deal with this anymore. Like you need to help me. I don't know what to do. Like the calls are draining. I feel like we're talking about the same problem. I see the same thing. The person is stuck, right? And so here's what I shared with him. And this is something that we can do at all levels of relationship if we want to really help people, take them to the next level and still feel good about where they are. I said to him, while this person is talking about their problem, and my husband's, again, very good at accepting people where they're at. So that kind of came automatic to him. Step one is, while you are seeing the person exactly where they are, and if you can't, like this first level is not to be glazed over, because a lot of us in relationships are not okay with the people where they're at in our lives. And that will right there cause a breakdown in the relationship. It's like, yeah, I love him, but like, can he go get a better job? Like, I love him, but he needs to, I love her, but she needs to, right? And yet here we are saying, we want to be loved exactly as we are, right? Somebody said in a previous call, I love traveling because I get to be me and I just get to be seen as exactly where I'm at, who I am, right? If we understand how important it is for us to be just seen and loved the way we are, that it's hard to sometimes show up online and show up in places in the world because we're scared that people won't just love us exactly where we are. Well, then, ergo, we need to be doing this in our relationships. And it's like, yeah, but I think he's capable of so much more. I think she's capable of so much more. And it's like, yes, I get that. But you can't mix that with loving them unconditionally where they're at. So step one is, am I really truly able to see this person where they're at, wounds and all, imperfections and all, and just like me, just like I want to be loved, just the way I am, can I allow myself, can I see them and love them exactly where they're at. And if I have any resistance around that, can I go do the work I need to do around that? Because that is not them. If something about somebody bugs you or me, that work is not for the other person. And that's where we get a lot of our wires crossed. There's nothing unconditional about that. I've seen people get married and tell their spouses what to eat. I've seen people get married and tell their spouses what to wear, how to be, what haircut to have, how to speak, when to speak. And we really think about it because we have something incomplete in ourselves. And the last thing when we're in a loving, connected relationship we want to do is project that on the other person. So becoming consciously aware of that, and then being willing to do the work and being aware enough to know that that is not them. That work is mine to do. And chances are I project the level of self-love to them that I have of myself. Coming back to week 1, right? We can't love others unless we love ourselves. So if I don't love you completely, chances are it has nothing to do with you. Sorry, I apologize. It's actually because I actually don't really love myself unconditionally. And yet I expect that from people, but I don't do it for myself, right? So that's the work, step 1. So can we now see the person where they're at? See them. And if you're there, phenomenal, right? That is the first part of it. Whole and complete. There's nothing broken about anybody. I'm not broken. Just because I'm working on myself doesn't mean I'm broken. You're not broken. My child's not broken just because they're in grade 2. They're just in grade 2, right? So it's like, can I love you where you are and simultaneously see you in your glory? See it all done. See all your problems solved. See you living your best, most glorious, epic life. Like, this is where we put our heart into it. This is where we put our vision, our imagination, our excitement, our limitlessness toward that person. And can you speak to them as though they are already there? Like when they talk about their problems to you, can you hold the vision of them in their glory, even as they're here? Can you hold them here? This is one of the most powerful ways we can connect with other people. It's like the human sees the human and the soul sees the soul. And you don't mix the two. You don't say, yeah, you're okay, but if you fix, just you need to get a better haircut and like no flowered shirts. Can you see and hold and behold the person? Do you see me? Do you hear me? And do I matter? And am I enough? Can you connect to your beloveds without giving me an objection, without going but rad? I'm a lawyer, man. I was born to make objections. I am legally licensed to make objections. I know them all. I've heard them all. I've been coaching since I was in my diapers. You're not really, you know what I mean? Way before I was a lawyer. I know what you're going to say. And that is the work. If you're there, great. Have fun with it. This is a bonkers, amazing tool. And if you can kind of get behind and play with it, amazing. That is what people want from us. And that's what they need. And that's what we want and need from others. That is our ultimate level of love. Can you love me just the way I am? I said to my husband the other day, I said, you know, I realize why we work. We work because when we met, first of all, our relationship formed over a phone. Like I had seen him once in February of 1997. think I got there right, 7. I'm getting old, man. And my friend introduced me to him at high school. It was one of her friends, and I met him for like a couple hours. He took me to Burger King because my friend was busy in biology class. And he was the funniest guy. He was such a polite ladies man. Like his friends were making some really perverted ass jokes in the car while we were going to Burger King at lunch. And he was like, guys, there's a lady in the car. Like, chill out, like watch your mouth, right? Like he was such a wonderful human being. And then he held my hand because I was wearing these really crazy, ridiculous heels in February. And he made sure I didn't break my neck. But there wasn't anything beyond that. I was actually kind of dating, because we were all dating when we were 16 years old, but I was dating this other guy. And then that fell apart. And 2 months later, his phone number gets left in my living room by my friend, whose friend this was, Sheila. And long story short, I had to call him about something because he was a DJ. And I was like this cool cat who was like, wait, I know about this party. I'll call the DJ. And so I paged him because we didn't have cell phones back then. And so I paged him and I was like, do you know who's DJing the Footloose party? Because my friends want to go to the Footloose party. And we ended up talking on the phone. And I didn't want to hang up with him. And we just stayed on the phone in 5 days. And like, that was, kind of the thing a lot of us did back then. But we clicked and I fell in love with him, not because of the $500 car that he drove where the windows didn't go up, not because of his haircut. I don't remember his haircut, not because of his clothes. I wasn't really particularly in love with his style of clothing, but I'm also not the biggest fashionista myself and like, don't really focus on clothes. It was him. I fell in love with him unconditionally. He fell in love with me. And so there was no like, oh, you make 6 figures. Oh, you love how I dress up. It was like, you should see how I look in the morning. And he'll look at me with like the sweetest eyes and say, you're just beautiful. I'm like, wow, this is really love, because I look like shit. Like my hair is upside down. I have eyeliner running from yesterday. Like, this is really be love, but it's not, he doesn't see me. He sees what's behind. There's no moment where I don't feel seen, heard, loved, mattered enough. Can we have that for each other? And can we do the work, the healing work necessary, if there is some or a lot, to get to that point? This is connection. Do you see me? Do I matter? Do you hear me? Do you see what I'm doing for you? With my own love language, even if it's not your love language. And can we start to give others with our love language? Can we say the things that seem obvious when they're actually not, to a standard where it is so entrenched that you now say it and they roll their eyes at you? My husband, when I said to him, thank you for everything you do for our family, he just went, oh, thank you. Thank you. It means a lot to me. He didn't roll his eyes. And I thought, we got to get to the eye rolling stage. I want to say it so many times. I want to be that person that sees that. And the people that have started to play with that, including myself in this last month, have seen the shift in then how that person now responds to things that would have previously been like, oh, you want me to do this? Now it's like, oh, I'll go do this. Yeah, sure. I'll take the garbage out for the 7th time this week. I'll change that next diaper. Because they feel connected to you. You want your staff, your team to bust their ass for you and have your back? They got to feel connected to you. They have to feel seen. Right. Yeah, you've seen it. I love that. I love that. Seema, can you see that they may have trauma? Exactly. It's like, oh, maybe this person's responding this way because of this. I've definitely picked up patterns in the people that I love. And then you don't poke it. When people say like, she pushes my buttons, what the ego does is it knows the wound and it pushes it. Because it wants to hurt the person, because it's hurt. So it's like, I'm hurt, you should be hurt too. Here, let me press on the trauma button. And the heart does the opposite. When you're connected to your heart, you hold that wound in your hands, you work around it, you hope to heal it. You don't poke it, you don't let other people poke it. You become fiercely protective around it, like you would if it was your child. If your child had a sensitive spot, like their height or their weight, and someone spoke up, I would imagine all of us would be like, oh, we jump in and say something nice and make sure that that didn't poke any parts of their possible, sensitivity around that. We don't do that sometimes in relationships, and we have the opportunity to do that. And so these things that we're talking about here, while it seems obvious, I'm realizing as I do more and more of this work in my own life and clients and friends, the people you think know that you love them actually don't know that. They may have known that at one point in time, hence the marriage, hence the connection, hence the relationship, hence the business. They don't know that anymore. You get to be the one that changes the trajectory of the relationship. You get to be the one that takes it from the downward spiral to the upward spiral. And some of you have already experienced those upward spirals. And I'm so thrilled. And I have experienced more upward spirals. Like there's just never enough, right? I love you. You're so welcome. No problem at all. So here's the final story. And I promise you that I actually don't sit here and wonder how I can make people cry or what's going to make me cry, but I just live a beautiful life. I just live a beautiful life that often has tears. And even this morning, as I was thinking of what I wanted to share with you, I actually sent a message to a really dear friend of mine because 2 weeks ago, there was something that came to me that I wanted to share with her. And I realized as I was preparing for this call with you guys, being more aware and conscious, that I actually hadn't shared this yet. But the story I want to share with you is the last few weeks of my time with Saloni at the hospital. Perhaps this was in the last week. Can't remember exactly. I remember exactly where I was standing. I remember exactly where everything was. I was in her hospital room at Oakville Trafalgar. And it was the beginning of COVID. It was a very crazy time, as we all know. And it was at a point in time when she started to wonder if she wasn't going to make it. And I've never been in her shoes. I can only imagine how one faces their own mortality. And in this case, all of us, including her, were very optimistic that she was going to make a turnaround. And there were moments where she started to make a turnaround. And so none of us really wanted to think about the possibility that she wouldn't be there, let alone her, right? And it was really in the very last few days where she said some things that made me think, okay, she is starting to think about this. And it's not easy. It's not easy for anybody. And a few times I had said to her, is there anything you want me to handle? Is there anything you want to prepare just in case? Like, it's such a difficult conversation to have, for her kids. Is there anything you want me to do? And she was like, no, I'm going to be fine. And so then it kind of went to the side. And it really was just in the last few days, last week or so, that we were really starting to have some important conversations. And even that, there weren't many of the, I might be going, so I want to say this. But there was this moment where, and when you're in a hospital, you're constantly interrupted by nurses and beeping and booping and things going off and people coming in and out. There was this little tiny moment where I looked at her and I had the courage to say to her, I said to her, And I want to just think about how this came up for you in the most authentic way. Because I'm thinking, did she say it to die? I asked her, I said to her, is there anything that you want to say to me that we haven't said yet? And she looked at me and she said, nothing I haven't said before many, many, many times. And then she said, what about you? And right then the nurse came in and started interrupting us. And while the nurse was doing her thing, I just slipped it in before the moment could pass. I said, no, same. There's nothing left for me to say to you. Like, I have said everything. I can't tell you. Here goes. I can't tell you what a big moment that was. I actually recently was interviewed on a podcast of a colleague. I think the recording is coming out soon because she said May they would broadcast it. And I shared this with her, one of the most important conversations I've ever had with someone. And I was so grateful in the moment, but more after she passed, like the value of this conversation, of this understanding just exponentially grows. Because her and I were so clear to each other the whole time. There was nothing. Imagine we had a moment where it was like, do you want to just add a little? It's like, oh, maybe I've said this before, but I really need you to know there was nothing. There was nothing. Not for me and not for her. And I thought, what an epic love story to be able to have a moment. You know, sometimes we don't have that time to say goodbye. We had it and we didn't need it because we always said it. And it wasn't like, oh, it's unspoken and you know and I know. It was like we told each other we loved each other all the time. We would hang up and say, I love you all the time. It was so clear. Say it until it's obvious. That was one relationship where it was so obvious. But here I'm telling you that this morning, I said it to a friend and I thought, wow, I had parked something that came to me 2 weeks ago in my head. And I've seen this person a couple times since then. I've talked to them on the phone. Sometimes those are the conversations that, you know, are not the easiest to have, even if they're good. It's like, well, she knows. I don't need to tell her. It's like, no, say it. Say it. Just love like it's your last day, you know? It's not to be sad or it's like, isn't that the way we want to go out? To be able to look at Saloni and say, there is nothing I need to say to you was such a gift. I have no regrets. And now I feel like I know I still communicate with her, and that's obviously next level cool as far as the human experience. Not everybody feels they have that. I get that. But I didn't know that I was going to connect with her. And in the beginning, I doubted that it was even her. It was a gift. We were so clear. I went to all the post-funeral events where we had tiny gatherings, outdoor, distanced. And every single person came up to me and said, you, the way she spoke about you. And I was like, I know. I feel the same way. I knew exactly what it was to her. There was nothing to say. What if we did that with every relationship? Here I'm saying to you, I said something to my spouse that used to be something that he would complain about. I do everything. And I used to be like arguing to it. Like, no, you don't. I do this and this, and I used to make lists. But now I hear what he's actually trying to say. I actually see he wants to just be acknowledged for doing like as he should. And I want to, and I don't enough, and I'm going to do more. I want to do it until he rolls his eyes at me. So how do we deepen connection? I hope this gives you rolled your eyes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We just knew, right? Yeah, I mean, don't we all want to get to that point with our children, with our spouses, with our parents who don't have perhaps as long as we'd like? So your homework, if you accept the challenge, is, I don't know, pick 3 or 5 names. Grab a little napkin, Kleenex, paper, a note in your phone. Who are the 3 to 5 people in your life that you want to deepen your connection to? And if the list is longer, great. And if it's shorter, great. Who are those people? And when is the last time you celebrated them? When is the last time you said something to them? When is the last time you said, I acknowledge A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I want to know what else is on your heart that wants to be seen. And I want to see you fully. And if I didn't see that before, I want to work on what that blind spot was about. I want to know where your heart is sore, and I want to protect it, not poke it. Right? Do you really see me? Do you really hear me? Do I matter? Am I enough? If we start to tune into the hearts of the beautiful humans that we have in our lives at this level, I think it will change everything. And while we hold the hearts of the human, we hold this vision of this person here. When I think of Saloni and who she was for me, her having my back, that's exactly what she did. She adored, fearlessly, ferociously loved me exactly where I was, who I was. And she saw a level of potential and greatness in me that even I didn't see. And she held both at the same time. There's no bigger gift we can give our loved ones. When I'm coaching someone, I literally tune into that. I think, how can I love this person here and let her or him feel unconditionally loved, and simultaneously tune into the higher aspect of this person, seeing it all done and holding on to that energetic vibration while I talk to this person. Like, I see you here, I love you here, and I can see you here and love you here. And it's not about, why aren't you that now? It's, I see you and I love you here. And I see you and I love your potential. And they're completely unrelated, but both you. When my husband played with that experiment with his friend, he came back to me in an hour. I was like, just picture it all resolved. Picture it all just like in your head. Let him worry about the problem. You rise to the frequency of the solution. You stay in the energy of the solution. You don't judge him for the mess he's in. You don't go, oh God, here he is telling me this thing again. You listen. You do you. You're so good at that. Listen. Focus on this part. See it all resolved. And he came back to me and said, Brad, that was insane what happened. it just uplifted and up-leveled the conversation to a whole other ballgame. Even he started to feel more hopeful, the friend. He was more like, wait, right? We want people to feel the hope in us and see it without making us feel hopeless right now. When we're talking to our adult children or our teenage kids, we want to see them or meet them right where they're at and tune into the potential at the same time. That's a whole other thing than seeing somebody as incomplete, right? And when we receive that, that's the biggest gift that we get, right? It's like, wow, she really loves me and she really loves where I'm going. And do that for yourself as well. As you connect to yourself, can you unconditionally love yourself where you're at now? Not a change, not one tweak, all of it, the good, bad, and the ugly. And can you stay madly, hopelessly in love and tapped in and excited by your future self, your higher self, and hold both, because both actually exist. Both actually exist. And you can literally, with your conscious awareness, start to play with this, start to tap into this. It's really, really incredible. I hope this was a beautiful bonus for you. It feels for me like a cherry on top. Like I said, every time we get to review something, I get to go deeper into myself. So I'm excited. I'm already excited at where that's going to take me in my relationships going forward in all levels. And I hope that it does the same for you. It is an honor. You're so welcome. Thank you for this extra session. It was really nice to close out the program with. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm grateful to be the channel through which this came through. And I agree with you. I feel like this was an integral part of the Option Seek. Deeper connection. I love you guys. I feel even more deeply connected with you. I love you. Have a wonderful day. I hope you're enjoying it and taking care of yourself and fueling yourself. I love you guys. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.